Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So as many of you guys know, I am done with my ICU rotation and in just a couple of days, I take step 3. I'm about halfway through my first year of residency, which is pretty crazy. The time has been flying by, so this is kind of a good time to do a Q&A. It's been a few months. I asked ChatGPT to organize your guys' comments into different themes, so let's get to it. Starting off with some fun, lighthearted questions. What is your favorite hospital cafeteria food? Great question. You guys see me take a lot of videos of the food that I eat in the hospital. We actually have pretty good food at my hospital. I would say my favorite things when they do have them is sometimes they have Indian food. They have like chicken tikka masala and naan, which is very good. Or they have this like barbecue brisket burger. Those are like once in a while though. Those are like not every day, but when they have them, I definitely get them. Otherwise, if it's just a regular day in the hospital, I typically get a crispy chicken quesadilla and just put a bunch of hot sauce on it. That's like my go-to. Do you have any hilarious patient stories? The answer is definitely yes. I think a lot of people, when they think about the hospital, they think about sadness or dark times. And it's true. A lot of the reason that people are in the hospital is because it's, you know, some of the worst days of their lives. Like it's usually not for anything funny, right? But I think, as a lot of you guys know, healthcare workers, a lot of the way that we cope is by finding humor in things. And without that level of humor or optimism, you would just fall apart and really not enjoy what you're doing. So all of my co-healthcare workers can probably attest to the fact that yes, we all have some pretty funny, interesting patient stories that we're at least able to get a little bit of a laugh out of and kind of help us stay uplifted. It's kind of a vague answer because I want to respect all the patients that I've, cared for in my time as a resident, but I have seen some crazy things happen. If any of you guys have watched that new show, St. Dennis, then that show actually depicts it perfectly. A lot of you guys were asking about step 3, so let's go through some of those questions. Dominic says, I want to become an anesthesiologist, but I don't know what step 3 is. Could you explain? Step 3 is our third board exam in our series of board exams by the National Board of Medical Examiners. In medical school, you take step 1 and step 2, and then during residency, you take step 3. If you guys have been watching my YouTube channel throughout the last few years, then you watched me take step 1 and step 2, and step 3 is basically just the next frontier I have to get through. How has your study strategy evolved for step 3 compared to step 1 and step 2? So for step 3, I primarily relied on 3 resources, and that was UWorld, CCS cases, and Board Vitals. Now, Board Vitals is actually the resource that I hadn't used before, but I used it for step 3 and I really liked it. So much so that Board Vitals is actually sponsoring this video. Board Vitals offers thousands of high quality and up-to-date practice questions with detailed explanations, all curated by experts. I use them for step 3, but I really wish I had used them for step 1 and 2 as well. What makes them stand out compared to other resources is how customizable the question bank is. My absolute favorite feature is that you can stratify the questions by easy, moderate, and hard, so you can actually work your way up to the more difficult questions, which I think is just more conducive for learning. You can also customize your question bank with testing mode, adaptive mode, tutor mode, or study mode, so you can really study in the way that works best for you. And they give you really good feedback on your responses to the questions. Plus, their practice exams mimic the actual test, so you're training for test day while you're studying. And Board Vitals isn't just for step 1, 2, and 3. They also have practice questions for literally any type of exam we need to take, including our boards for anesthesiology, radiology, pathology. They also have banks for nursing boards, nurse practitioners, pharmacists, podiatrists, pretty much every area of healthcare. Again, I wish I found them sooner, and I'm really happy I was able to incorporate them into my studying. I'll have the link to Board Vitals in the description box below, so make sure to check them out. Thank you so much again to Board Vitals for helping me prep for my exams and for sponsoring this week's video. Anyway, like I was saying, I primarily use Board Vitals, UWorld, and CCS cases for step 3, but the hardest part was I had to study for step 3 while I was working, and so I kind of just had to like squeeze in time. If you guys watched my vlogs the last few weeks, you basically saw me just trying to study while I was either at work when I had some downtime, or when I got home from work when I was sitting at home after a long day. I had to study, which was different from step 1, for example, where your studying is really throughout the first year and a half of medical school, where all you're doing is didactic learning and prepping for your boards. Step 2 is a little bit more similar to step 3 because you're on rotation as a medical student while you're studying for step 2. So I guess that part was kind of similar, but I definitely had more free time as a medical student than as a resident. Also for step 1 and step 2, I used more resources like Sketchy and Pathoma and all those things. Whereas for step 3, I kind of just am banking a little bit more on the fact that I have some sort of baseline in this knowledge because I've already taken 2 board exams. And so it was more so about refreshing myself on certain concepts and getting myself to the point where I feel like I can pass the exam this week. Which, do I feel that way? I guess we'll find out. How do you mentally handle not being able to go to the gym and stay fit because of work and step 3? Great question. A lot of you guys know I'm definitely the kind of person that does better when they have more time to exercise and do fun things, keep myself healthy. It's been hard this past month. I've basically only had time to work and study for step 3, so I've had to put exercise and things on the back burner, but the way that I keep myself mentally sane is just by reminding myself that it's temporary, right? If you guys watch my vlogs from October, for example, my work-life balance was really good. I wasn't spending a whole lot of time at work compared to this past month when I was in the ICU. I did a half marathon. I was just doing a lot more active stuff in general. And I just have to remind myself that these phases are just gonna come in waves where sometimes you have no time to do anything other than work and study, and you don't get to take care of yourself as much. But then you'll have phases where you have a lot of time to do that. So I kind of just have to remind myself of that. If you have time to fit in exercise with your busy schedule, I encourage you to. But when I was doing like 80-hour weeks on ICU plus coming home and studying, it just wasn't possible. I had to prioritize studying for my boards. So that's just the reality, and I think accepting it for me helped a lot, and just reminding myself that it's almost over and I just have to get through this and then I'll be good. That's just the thing that's keeping me grounded. Okay, here are some residency and career questions. So what is your next rotation? I am currently on an ambulatory rotation, so basically just an outpatient kind of like primary care rotation, which is pretty nice, going from being in the ICU all day, 6 days a week, to the rotation I'm on right now, which is like 5 days a week, just like normal 9 to 5 working hours, is pretty nice. We're so gaslit into thinking that like a 9 to 5 job feels relaxing because we work such difficult hours on other services that even though an outpatient clinic rotation should be considered still like full time for like most people, I'm over here thinking it's kind of like a vacation, which is not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all to have that mindset, but it is nice to have a little bit of a break from being in the hospital all day. But after this block, I'll be doing another rotation in cardiology, so that'll be a lot of fun. What is your future goal? This is a really, really good question. I've definitely started to think a lot more about my future, especially being in residency. I think the hard thing with being pre-med and being in medical school is you don't really get to be super future oriented because you're constantly on this grind and you don't know what's gonna happen next. You don't know what school you're gonna get into. You don't know what residency program you're gonna match into. But now that I'm in residency and I know what my next few years of life look like, I've been a little bit more future oriented. So my future goals, one, of course, make it through residency, right? That's like the main thing. Besides that though, I just want to live like a fun, fulfilled life. I'm definitely one of those people that enjoys many different things, and medicine is just one of those things. I wasn't one of those people that grew up in medicine was like my only calling. I like this, I love this, but I have other hobbies and I have other interests. And like, for example, YouTube, right? I've been able to start a platform here, and that was just like a passion project that I started because I enjoyed it. And I want to be able to do other stuff like that in other areas of my life as well, and not even just healthcare, right? I want to be able to explore other, opportunities, hobbies, passions, maybe careers. I don't know. We'll see. The short-term goals, however, are to continue this YouTube channel, try to get to 100,000 subscribers, which we're like halfway there, which is pretty crazy. We've had a lot of growth these last few months, so I'm kind of seeing it. I feel like it could happen. Another goal is that I want to run my first marathon. As a lot of you guys know, I ran my first half a couple months ago, and I've signed up for my first full marathon, which will be in April. I'm very excited for that, and I'm gonna keep setting other goals as well because that's what life's all about. Once you're done with everything, do you think you'll return to practice here? We're short on anesthesiologists and critical care hospitalists. That's a good question. I think a lot of people grow roots where they train for residency, and San Diego seems like the kind of place that I might want to end up settling down in, but a lot of that depends on what happens while I'm out there. You know, the communities I build, the networks I make, if my family is still here in Vegas, right? If they leave in the time that I'm in San Diego, then I would have less reason to come back here. But it'll all kind of depend on how the next 3 years go. But I wouldn't mind coming back to Vegas. I grew up here. Everything for me is here. All my friends, my family's here. So it's hard to see myself living somewhere else. But that's part of the reason that I think moving to another state for residency is going to be so good for me. Okay, so some questions about ICU and patient care. Are all ICU patients post-op or is surgery one of the paths to improvement? Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons people come to the ICU is because something happens that is going to require surgical intervention, or they are post-op and need some sort of hemodynamic or neurovascular monitoring. The ICU really interacts with all specialists in the hospital, so surgery is just one of them. But yeah, we definitely have to work with our surgeons when we're in the ICU. What was your favorite part about being in the ICU? I would say just the kind of like life-saving medicine dynamic. It just felt like the most impact I've been able to make as a resident, because the people in the ICU are very critical. The reason they come to the ICU a lot of the time is because of something life-threatening, and it's a good feeling to be able to help in those moments. And I just really enjoyed it. Like, if I was gonna do some sort of area of medicine, I think it's definitely gonna be like critical care. Also just the people. I really enjoyed the like tight-knit kind of vibes of the ICU, because you work so closely with all the other healthcare professionals, like the respiratory therapists, the nurses, the pharmacists, the PAs, the case managers, social workers. Like, they're all there. We all round together. I really enjoyed that. Have you ever had a patient you personally knew during your time at your current hospital? I'll keep the details short, but like, I haven't had people I know as my patients, but I've known people who have come to my hospital, if that makes sense. A lot of the times, like, if you have a friend that comes to the hospital, to the ER for whatever reason, and they know you work there, they'll call you and text you to tell you that they're there. So that's definitely happened to me. How much did you score on step 1 and step 2, and what do you recommend for a first-year medical student? So good question. I've kind of talked about those things throughout my YouTube channel, but for step 1, I was in the first cohort that did pass-fail, so I passed step 1, and for step 2, I got a 245, which I think is a pretty good score. I don't know what the average is right now. I know for my application cycle, that was about 3 points under the average for anesthesiology, but didn't matter. I still matched pretty well, so can't complain about that. As far as tips go, there's a lot of them. There's so many tips, it would take many videos, and there are a lot of creators that make really good videos for tips, but my probably number one thing is to like focus on yourself and your happiness throughout medical school. I think it's an underrated piece of advice. I think a lot of people are looking for like what to use to study, you know, how to make it through, but honestly, the most important thing is to not lose yourself in the process and to enjoy what you're doing. And if you're sacrificing those things for medical school, it's not worth it and you're gonna burn out. So from day one, make sure that you continue to do things you enjoy, make time for the things you enjoy, put it in your schedule to, you know, exercise, hang out with your friends, hang out with your family, set aside time for yourself, whatever that means to you. Start doing that from day one. It doesn't matter how much you study if you don't enjoy it. And usually cutting back on some studying for some extra self-care time goes a long way and will make your experience a lot better. What are some things to buy before starting medical school? Honestly, probably just like a really good working laptop. I personally bought my MacBook going into medical school as like a gift for myself, but also because I wanted like a really reliable, trusty studying computer. So I got myself a MacBook. I spent a lot of money on it because I upgraded it completely. I actually spec'd it out so that I could use it for video editing. So that was kind of a little bit overkill, but for me it was worth it because I edit all my videos with my MacBook and it processes this 4K footage very well. But if you're not using it for that, then I think just getting a regular like MacBook Air is really important. Also, just make sure that you have all the resources you need and know what your school gets you already. So like you're not spending money on resources your school's gonna buy for you. But subscriptions to, sketchy boards, all that kind of stuff is important. Or if you're moving into a new place, honestly, just like spend money on like good furniture and good decor, because that's where you're gonna be living for 4 years probably. So it's good to enjoy where you're living. So I would just spend the extra money and be happy with your living space. Oh, I don't know how I didn't mention this, but buy a dog. If you don't have a dog, buy a dog. I bought 2 of them during medical school, and those were the best purchases that I made, hands down. So good for the mental health, the happiness. I love them so much. Chip is literally laying on the floor right here, and I would not have made it through medical school probably without them. Is it possible to get into medical school as a B average student who struggles with math? Absolutely. I'm actually the testament to that because I failed math my first semester of college, and I was a pretty like B, couple A's student throughout high school. I did just fine. I made it through physics after failing math. Like, you'll be okay. Just make sure you use tutoring resources. Make sure you get extra help if you need it. Khan Academy was really good for all the basic science classes, as well as OChem. I would definitely consider using them. It's very possible. It's just, do you want to do it badly enough? And if you do, then you'll make it in. You'll be fine. How do you deal with emotional stress and recovery from seeing patients pass away? This is a good question, and I get asked a lot about this, not even just from you guys in the comments, but also like friends and family, for example. It's no surprise if you work in healthcare, you're going to see a lot of moments where people pass away, and it's because they're at the hospital for a reason, right? I think what's always kept me grounded is just telling myself that they have a better chance of surviving and doing well with us than without us, right? If they didn't have us there in the hospital, then chances are like they might not have had a chance, right? If they are able to make it to the hospital and we're able to intervene, even if they end up, passing away for whatever reason later on in their course, you try to tell yourself that you gave them the best chance that they had. You did everything that you could for them. And again, it's usually was already happening, right? If they're coming to the hospital, like something was happening. So you just have to tell yourself that you guys did your best. You gave them the chance. You gave the patient and their families, dignity and peace with knowing that you did what you could. It is hard though, but I will say I think you get more used to it as you work in this field. Again, keeping yourself grounded and in that mindset that I just talked about, I think helps a lot. Have you considered doing collaborations with other creators? Absolutely. I love collaborating with other people whenever I can. I've done a bunch of collaborations with my friend Andy, Rachel. We just did a road trip, the 3 of us together this past summer. I've collaborated with Kevin over at Med School Insiders because we're friends and we live in the same city and have worked on courses and stuff together. I've worked with John Luca from NextGen MD. I've actually written a research paper with other medical social media creators like Prerak and Kinza. So yeah, I love collaborating whenever I can. I would love to do more collabs in the future. There's actually a doctor from the Philippines who's coming to Vegas later this month, and we'll hang out and probably collab in some way. If you guys think you know who I'm talking about, comment down below your guesses. But yeah, always down for more collabs. All right, I've been filming for a while and I need to get back to studying, so it's time to end this Q&A. Thank you guys so much for all the questions and just really for supporting me these last few years. It really means a lot, and it's really helped me keep on going through this difficult path. Also, shout out to Board Vitals again for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check them out. Wish me luck on step 3, everyone. This video will be up the morning after I am done, so hopefully I make it through in one piece, but I'll update you guys on how it goes. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.